one of the most important concepts in the progression of a Muslim in their deen is suhbah. It comes from three basic letters, Sad, Ha, and Ba. And these three basic letters, if you understand them and you understand the true meaning behind them, they provide a huge impetus towards improving and keeping yourself firm in your deen. Suhbah actually means companionship, to keep companionship with someone. And the best example of this is actually the Sahaba, because the Sahaba are named from the exact three same letters, Sad, Ha, and Ba, Sahaba. So they actually exemplify the characteristics of Suhbah to the maximum degree. And in fact, if you want to look at the Sahaba and you want to define them, we don't call them the Mufassirin, although among them were the greatest of the Mufassirins. We don't call them the Muhaddithin, although many of them preserved the Hadith. We don't call them the Fuqaha, although many of them preserved the fiqh of the Prophet ﷺ. We don't call them the Mutasawwifin. We don't branch them off according to any of the branches of Islamic knowledge, but we call them the Sahaba. And the reason we call them the Sahaba is because the ultimate thing which defined them was their suhbah with the Prophet ﷺ. The thing that made them, the thing that gave them their status was the fact that they spent time in the company of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is the central principle that defines a Sahaba. In fact, if somebody accepted Islam and saw the Prophet ﷺ and never even prayed a prayer, never even fasted, never went for the Hajj, never paid zakah, but then died in a battle after that, or passed away without having the opportunity to do any ibadah, he still falls in the category of a Sahaba. And that's because simply the companionship of the Prophet ﷺ provided such an extreme benefit to these people that this then became their mark for the rest of time. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, radiyallahu anhum wa radu an, that Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Allah. So this is the central thing that defines the characteristic of the greatest generation of Muslims that ever lived, meaning their companionship. And it's exactly this principle that all the subsequent generations after them held on to. Meaning, if you take the companionship of people who are righteous, and you take the companionship of people who have progressed in the deen further than you, then you will eventually be able to inherit their characteristics. So this is exactly how we define the Sahaba, and not only among the Sahaba. I mean, you can say, well, that's not a fair comparison because the Sahaba were the Sahaba and the Prophet was the Prophet. But the same thing with the Tabi'in. What's a Tabi'i? A Tabi'i is someone who saw a Sahaba in a state of Iman. Once they see a Sahaba in a state of Iman, they become a Tabi'i. And a Tabi'i obviously has a very high status in this deen because the Prophet ﷺ said that khayrukum, the best of you is the best of my generation, that the people of my generation, then the people after them, and then the people after them. So this is the definition of a Tabi'i. A Tabi'i is a person who came after the Sahaba, spend time with one of the Sahaba. Similarly with the Tabi' Tabi'in, how do you define the Tabi' Tabi'in? The Tabi' Tabi'in are defined as that generation of people that came after the Tabi'in who spent time in the company of the Tabi'in. So in each individual scenario, the way you're defining these people, the greatest generations in the history of Islam, is by the companionship that they kept. So this shows you and highlights the importance of companionship. Who you keep as your company will define what you become. Anybody, you can take anybody and you put them with smokers, put them for 1 month with a group of smokers, and they'll start smoking. Because that's their companionship. They take from the effect of their companionship. And you can take an average person and you put them in the company of the greatest people and they will become among the greatest people. That's why you see people who quote unquote are, for example, if you go to the madaris in Pakistan, there's quote unquote people who failed out of school, who are called illiterate, who have no quote unquote abilities, and they enter into a madrasa and they turn out to be some of the best ulama. They're reading classic Arabic texts, they're reading the Quran and translating it, they're reading the most complicated tafasir, and people call them illiterate and people said they had no abilities. And you take, the college student who's got 130 IQ and he's entering into the greatest universities in America, and he's Muslim and he has a desire to learn Arabic and he can't do it. He can't do it even with all that ability, because everything's based on your companionship. When you keep the right companionship, that's when you will progress in your deen. And that's exactly what the Sahaba were. The Sahaba are essentially defined as the people who kept the companionship of the Prophet. Now, obviously, the Prophet ﷺ was the greatest of companions, and then the Sahaba subsequently emulated him. So that's exactly the goal for each of us, that we should look at who our companions are, who do we spend time with, who do we hang around with, because those are the people that we'll end up becoming like in the end. So we should search actually for you look for the people who are the most righteous in your community, and you purposely go and spend time with those people, and you hang around those people, and you make those people your companions, and you make those people your group, because ultimately that's how you'll progress, and that's how you'll attain something in this deen. So that should be the goal of each of us. Now, if you look at many of our lives today, we have many companions that unfortunately hold us back in our deen. And the first and the foremost is the TV. Every time you turn the TV on, and every time you allow those companions to enter into your life, they draw you down. There's no doubt about it. Because they put ideas into your head, they put a lifestyle in your head, they put images into your head, they put sounds into your head that become something that tugs at your fundamental deen. So every time you have a companionship with these people, it has an effect on you. You may not realize it, but companionship has an extreme effect, and I've just given you all these examples. Similarly, what we listen to, what we eat, who we spend our time with, all of these we have to search and really, really think deeply about each of the companions we keep, because each of those in the end will have effect on us. And at the same time, we should also look for good companions. And the ulama have written a very, very detailed list of how you seek out your companionship. And obviously, number one is you look for people who follow the Sharia, people who put importance on the Sharia, people who put importance on the Sunnah, both internal and external, people who regularly have the tawfiq to read the Quran, people who regularly come to the masjid, people who regularly spend their wealth in charity, people who, all the things that are good that are listed in the Quran and the Hadith, those are exactly the kind of people that you want to hang around with. And eventually you will become like them. And this is exactly what we have. We have this chain that exists within the deen. So, somebody spends time with their teacher, and then other people spend time with them, and other people spend time with them, and eventually the entire community rectifies itself. And you'll see this over and over again. I mean, there'll be people who you'll see in like colleges, they'll change their lives. It's like some sister will put on hijab, or some brother will start spending more time in the masjid, or some person will start spending more time reading the Quran. And you'll see their whole family initially had nothing to do with Islam. And then slowly over time, because of that one person, the whole family begins to change. That's because of the companionship of that person. The people in the family don't even know it. They don't even have a choice. They don't actively say, we're going to change our lives. But because that person changed their lives, and then they go and they take the company of their family eventually changes. It doesn't even need to be through words. It has nothing to do with words. The Prophet ﷺ was silent more than he spoke. It has to do with sitting with those kind of people, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers His blessings on those kind of people, and then when you sit with them, you ultimately benefit. So this is one of the most important concepts within this deen, and people unfortunately don't realize it. It has nothing to do with books. It has nothing to do with lectures. It has nothing to do with, billboards and conferences. It has to do with simply finding people who are righteous, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the tawfiq to develop their deen, and then spending time with them. And that's how you improve. That's how you improve over a sustained period of time. And that's exactly, our own goal as well. Why do we meet every morning? Why do we spend time on keeping company with one another? Because when I keep company with you, I benefit. When he keeps company with us, we all benefit. When you keep company with us, everybody benefits. Similarly, spending time in the masjid. When you spend time with the people whom Allah has given the tawfiq to enter the masjid, you benefit. Because nobody can enter the masjid except that Allah gives them the tawfiq to do it. There are so many people. I mean, how many people pray Fajr here? 10, 15 people in the masjid? And how many people live in the vicinity? 2,000 or 3,000, people. I've heard 2,000 or 3,000 families live in the vicinity of this masjid. And many of them, it doesn't even come in their mind that they should come into the masjid. In fact, for many of us, it didn't come in our mind until recently. And it's just the tawfiq of Allah. It's just up to Allah. It has nothing to do with what we've done. We didn't earn coming into the masjid. We didn't inherit it from our parents. You have to have the tawfiq, and it has to be that Allah blessed you with the idea to come into this masjid and to spend time here. And many people know. You ask anybody, how many times is the reward for praying in the masjid? They'll all tell you it's 27 times more. Yet how many people will have the actual ability to get up in the morning, start their car, drive it over here, come into the masjid, and then pray the Fajr Salah in the masjid? Yet the rewards are so great that the Prophet ﷺ said that the person who prays Fajr in the masjid, he gets the reward as if he prayed half the night. Half the night of prayer on the Day of Judgment. Imagine the value of that. I can tell you right now that even one ayah in prayer is more valuable than anything that we'll ever earn in this life, anything that you can ever earn in this life. One salah in the masjid is more valuable than all the salary that you will earn in your entire life. From when you start working to when you end, add it all up, it can be $1 billion. Your one salah in the masjid is worth more than that. Because that is the essence of what we were sent here for. And these are the fara'id upon us, and this is the model of the Prophet ﷺ. So, this is the goal for each of us, that we establish the sunnah and the sharia in our lives. And the way you do it is through company of those people whom Allah has granted the tawfiq to do so. Meaning you spend time with the hearts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has developed, and then subsequently you'll benefit. And this has been our tradition all the way from the time of the Prophet. The Sahaba, they sought the company of the Prophet. The Tabaeen, they sought the company of the Sahaba. The Tabaeen, they sought the company of the Tabaeen. And then after that, all of the righteous people of this ummah have always sought the company of the Mashayikh and the ulama, spent time with them, learned from them, and subsequently developed themselves so that the next generations could benefit after them. This deen is transmitted by interaction with one another. All the books in the world can be burned and the deen will continue. Yet, if you remove the mashayikh and the ulama from the world and you have all the deen in the books, nothing will exist. And that's exactly why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't send a book alone, but sends a prophet with it. Because it's exemplified. The deen is exemplified and the deen is learned from person to person to person. That's the means of transmission of this deen. So, place an extreme amount of emphasis on who your company is. Find those people who are the most righteous within your community and spend time with them. Spend time in the masjid because that's the greatest place to spend company. And eliminate the company of those people and those things that will bring you down. Especially nowadays, it's less people and it's more mechanical things like the TV and the radio and the internet. And we end up reading things or seeing things or hearing things that should not be part of our company. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to establish this simple principle in our life and give us the tawfiq to find the company of those people who, inshaAllah, He has blessed and guided on the straight path. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.